The first light of Wednesday crept over the horizon, spilling gold into the cracks of the world. The air itself seemed to tremble, as though holding back a secret too heavy for the night to bear. Chosen ones, you have felt this before. The quiet stir before the wind changes direction, before the very air bends to something greater than itself. This is not the kind of dawn that simply begins a day. This is the kind that summons the part of you buried under years of forgetting. The ground beneath you feels different now, not in weight, but in memory. The stones remember where you have walked. The soil hums with the echoes of your true name, the one no tongue dared speak aloud since the day you were hidden from yourself. The birds do not sing as they did yesterday. Their notes are sharper, more urgent, as though they are messengers in feathered form, delivering a call meant only for you. Your reflection, should you dare to meet it this morning, will not stare back in quiet recognition. It will challenge you. The eyes you see will hold a depth that is both ancient and unbearably present, a reminder that your soul did not arrive here by accident. The threads of this moment were woven before the oceans found their shores, before the first seed split open to meet the sun. There is a rhythm, faint but steady, pulsing beneath the sound of the waking world. It is the drumbeat of a truth you once lived by, a truth stolen from you not by force, but by a slow erosion of spirit. This Wednesday is the boundary. Beyond it, the self you were never meant to forget waits like a locked gate trembling for its key. Do not mistake this for a simple day. The light itself will test you. It will shine not only on the world around you, but into the deepest corridors of your being, exposing what you have hidden even from yourself. The sky held the hue of an endless dawn, as if the sun had risen but refused to climb higher, letting the world linger in a perpetual threshold between night and day. Shadows stretched unnaturally long across the fields, as though time itself was reluctant to move forward. The air carried a strange weight not of storm, but of expectation, like the breath the earth takes before it speaks. Birdsong wove through the stillness, yet the notes seemed caught in a loop, repeating with the precision of a forgotten ritual. People moved quietly through the streets, not rushing as they might on any other morning, but walking slowly, their eyes occasionally lifting toward the horizon, as if waiting for a sign. Every sound carried farther than it should, footsteps echoing down empty alleys, whispers stretching beyond their source. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang just once, a sound so deep it felt like it reached through the air and touched the bones. The ring hung there, not fading, but merging with the hum beneath everything, a low vibration that seemed to seep through the soil and into the soles of your feet. It was the kind of sound that unsettled clocks and made their hands twitch against their glass. The light never grew brighter, and yet it didn't fade either. It draped the world in a perpetual soft gold that made edges blur and details feel both near and impossibly far. A child stood at a corner watching the sky holding a paper kite that swayed without wind. The moment felt paused, but not dead alive, in a way that whispered something was just beyond reach. Even the rivers moved differently. The water shimmered, as if reflecting not the sky above, but another sky entirely, one you could almost step into if you looked too long. People avoided gazing at it for more than a moment, their eyes darting away as if they might fall in, It was not a morning to be measured in hours, but in heartbeats. A quiet pulse stitched into every breath, every glance, every small movement. Something unseen was circling the edges of reality, not yet stepping forward, but close enough that the air itself felt aware. The day waited, and so did you. The first rays reached the edge of the world, spilling a pale gold that seemed older than the sky itself. It was not light that simply illuminated, but light that carried meaning. Each beam moved as though it knew where to land, touching certain stones, certain faces, certain doorways, with a precision that felt intentional. The horizon was not just a meeting place of earth and sky, but a scroll unrolling slowly, line by line for the ones who knew how to read it. Fishermen paused at the shore, their nets half cast, staring toward the shimmer in the east. The waves caught the light, and for a moment the crests formed the shape of written words. Then they dissolved, leaving only ripples and a silence that felt deeper than the sea. A shepherd in the hills swore. He saw the same shapes in the clouds above him, letters bending like reeds in the wind. Somewhere between the shimmer and the sky, a psalm began to form, not sung by human voice, yet carrying the weight of an ancient melody. It was the kind of sound that didn't meet your ears first, but your spirit. Words unspoken, yet known, unfolding in the quiet language of the soul. And in that silent hymn there was a line that struck with both comfort and urgency, a reminder that the Nazarene once said heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. The light seemed to respond to this unvoiced truth, brightening in slow waves, as if each syllable of the eternal promise became a pulse of radiance. Across the land, those sensitive enough to feel it found themselves stopping. Mid-step, their breath caught between the old self and the self being called into view. It was not a psalm that could be written down. It could not be contained by parchment or captured by ink. It belonged to the horizon and to the moment, and to the one who dared to listen fully. Those who turned away would only see a beautiful sunrise. Those who faced it without flinching felt the line being drawn between what was and what was to come. The light held there unmoving, a sentence half spoken, a truth waiting for the final word. The ground was cool beneath your feet, carrying the faint thrum of something alive beneath the soil. As you walked, each step seemed to echo not in the air, but in the rhythm of the earth itself. A slow, steady beat, like a distant drum, grew louder with every stride. The strange part was how it aligned perfectly with the light above. Every time your foot touched the earth, the sun seemed to flicker ever so slightly, as though acknowledging your movement. Shadows lengthened and shortened in odd intervals, no longer obeying the normal sway of the morning. They shifted like watchful sentinels, stretching toward you, then pulling away as if guided by the same unseen pulse that guided your steps. The wind moved in sudden bursts, wrapping around you in spirals before vanishing, leaving the air unnaturally still. Far ahead, an empty road curved toward a ridge bathed in pale gold. The ridge seemed ordinary until you noticed it breathing. The light there expanded and contracted in the same rhythm you had been hearing deep below. Almost without thinking, your pace adjusted to match that breath. The more you moved in sync, the more the world around you began to sharpen. The hum of unseen insects grew into a song. The air felt charged with fine threads of static. You passed a cluster of trees and their leaves trembled, though no wind touched them. Each movement of the branches matched the sun's pulse. Each drop of dew that fell from their tips landed in perfect time with your steps. It was as if the whole landscape had been waiting for someone to walk in, rhythm with it, waiting to awaken a pattern, long dormant. Somewhere beyond sight, a sound rose low and resonant, not from instruments, but from the earth itself. It was not music in the way humans understand it, but it moved through you with the same force. It spoke in vibrations, shaping thoughts that didn't form into words, but into knowing. When you reached the ridge, the light flared once, a heartbeat of brilliance so bright it blurred the edges of reality. In that moment, you felt as though you were not walking toward the horizon, but into it, and that whatever waited there already knew the measure of your steps. The village clock tower stood in the square, its face turned toward the rising light. But this morning, its hands did not move as they should. The second hand quivered, refusing to tick forward. The minute hand trembled as if caught between two choices. The hour hand had shifted slightly backward against the pull of its gears, as though time itself had been persuaded to pause. The air around the tower shimmered faintly, bending the outlines of its stone edges into a wavering haze. People gathered below, but none spoke. Their eyes moved between the frozen clock and the horizon, where the sun lingered in the same impossible position. Shadows clung to the cobblestones in unfamiliar shapes. The fountain's water arched in midair for a moment longer than gravity would allow, before falling back into the basin. Each droplet sparkled in slow motion, catching the strange gold of the morning. It was then that a whisper came, not from any mouth, but from the space between heartbeats. It carried the same weight as an ancient memory, a verse that had walked across centuries, untouched by decay. In the stillness, the words surfaced. The Nazarene once said, "Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life?" The phrase rippled through the square, and it was as if the clock itself heard and hesitated even more, refusing to measure the moment. Those who stood near the tower felt an odd sensation, as if the ground beneath them had stretched. Time loosened its grip just enough for thoughts to wander farther than usual. Memories surfaced from years past, woven seamlessly with flashes of things not yet lived. A mother holding her child suddenly saw the boy grown, standing in a field she did not recognize. An old man at the fountain saw himself young again, running toward someone whose face he could not yet see. The verse continued to hum within them, bending their sense of urgency, twisting the old rules of before and after. The clock became irrelevant in the face of what they now felt. The world was not rushing toward an ending, nor clinging to a beginning. It was suspended perfectly, balanced on a single note of light. And though no one dared speak it aloud, they all knew that when the clock finally moved again, something irreversible would follow. The morning air shifted with sudden currents, one warm like a summer breath, the other cold enough to sting the skin. They collided in silent bursts, weaving around you as if carrying something unseen. Between the rise and fall of each wind there was a gap, a stillness so precise it felt deliberate. It was in that gap that the voice began to speak, not in the rolling boom of thunder, nor in the fragile tremor of a whisper, but in a tone that seemed to exist just beneath hearing. The sound was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It carried the weight of a language, older than the rivers, older than the mountains, yet it slipped easily into the space between thoughts, as though it had always been there. The trees lining the path swayed only when the warm wind passed, but the cold wind left them frozen in place, like silent witnesses. Each time the currents met, the voice grew clearer. It did not call your name, and yet you knew it was speaking to you. Every syllable seemed to fold inside itself, creating meaning that could not be repeated aloud, because the moment you tried to put it into words, the meaning would vanish like smoke. The voice moved in patterns, pausing exactly when the leaves stilled, then flowing again when the grasses bowed toward the horizon. Somewhere ahead, a field opened wide and the winds funneled into it, swirling into a slow spiral. The center glowed faintly, not with fire or sunlight, but with something softer, the pale luminance of a memory you had forgotten you carried. As you stepped closer, the voice grew louder, but not in volume, rather in presence, until it felt as though it was not coming from outside at all, but resonating from within your own chest. When you reached the edge of the spiral, the winds parted, forming a narrow path inward. The light at the center pulsed once in quiet rhythm, and the voice spoke a final phrase before falling silent. Its meaning was not complete, not yet. It was a fragment, a seed pressed into your mind, waiting for the moment it would. The shoreline was quiet, as if the tide had paused to listen. Waves rolled in with a slow, deliberate rhythm, each one carrying a silver shimmer that seemed to come from beneath the surface rather than from the sun. Above the horizon, the light was soft and endless, but in the water, something different stirred. The reflection of the sky bent, as though the sea were a mirror being tilted by unseen hands. At first, it was only a faint alignment, the meeting of two streaks of light, one vertical from the sky's descent into the water, and one horizontal from the sun's long path across the horizon. They crossed for only a moment, then broke apart with the next wave. But as the tide moved again, the lines reformed, this time holding steady. The ocean's surface had drawn a perfect cross, not painted in ink or carved in stone, but made entirely of light and motion. A fisherman, standing knee-deep in the shallows, froze mid-step. His breath caught as the glow reached toward him through the water. The lines did not blur, even as the waves rose and fell. Instead, they pulsed as if alive. Each pulse matched the steady beat of something deeper than the sea. A rhythm not unlike a heartbeat. The sight carried with it a stillness that pressed against the edges of the mind. It brought to memory the words once spoken by the Nazarene. "Take heart. It is I. Do not be afraid." And with that memory came an inexplicable sense that the light in the water was not a trick nor a coincidence, but a message meant for whoever would see it and not turn away. Seabirds circled overhead, their calls muted by the strange hush. The air itself felt denser, richer, carrying the faint scent of rain, even though the sky above was clear. The fisherman stepped closer, his shadow touching the edge of the light, and for an instant the reflection shifted, as though acknowledging him. The cross did not fade with the changing tide. It held its place as if anchored to something unseen beneath the waves. The longer it remained, the more it felt as though the water itself waited for someone to step forward and find what lay beyond its shining threshold. Mist clung low to the valley floor, curling around the base of the trees and hiding the river from sight. The air was cool but not biting, carrying the faint scent of cedar and something older, something like stone, worn smooth by centuries. The path ahead narrowed between two ridges and disappeared into the haze. You could hear the river long before you saw it, its steady rush, deep and resonant, like the sound of 1,000 voices speaking at once. Just below, hearing, when the mist thinned, the bridge came into view. It was narrow and arched high above the water, its stones darkened by age and weather. No rope, no rail, only the quiet hum of the current far below. The surface of the bridge shimmered faintly, not from wetness, but from something else, as though the stones themselves were remembering every step that had crossed them before. As you placed your foot on the first stone, the hum of the river deepened, and a faint vibration traveled upward into your bones. With each step, the mist shifted, revealing fragments of what seemed like memories, but not all of them. Yours, faces passed in the corners of your vision. Some familiar, others, from lifetimes you could not name. A hand reaching for yours, in a marketplace long gone. A shadowed doorway with the scent of bread and smoke. The sound of laughter under a sky filled with stars you had never seen. Halfway across, you paused. The air felt thicker here, as if time itself had slowed to watch you. The river's voice changed its tone, softening into something like a song, yet without melody. The current swirled below, forming patterns that broke and reformed too quickly to follow. Every now and then, the water seemed to flash with fragments of light, as if something within it was moving faster than the flow. The far side of the bridge was still shrouded, but a faint glow seeped through the mist. It was not sunlight, and it did not flicker. It called without sound, without promise, only presence. And though you could not yet see what waited beyond, you knew the bridge was not simply crossing space. It was moving you through the seam between who you had been and who you had not yet met. The first rays of light crept over the distant hills, spilling into the valley in slow, deliberate waves. Each blade of grass caught the glow, as though the sun itself was taking inventory of every living thing. The air trembled faintly, not with wind, but with a hum so low it seemed to rise from the earth's own heart. At the center of the valley stood an old stone altar, its surface cracked, yet still holding the weight of something unseen. Carved into the stone was a circular seal so worn by time that the edges of its markings blurred into the rock. The light touched it briefly, then withdrew, as if testing its surface before returning again. Brighter, more insistent. With each pulse, the hum in the ground deepened until small pebbles near the altar began to shift and roll toward it. The seal responded with a thin line of gold spreading through its cracks like veins, filling with light. Those who stood near felt the temperature drop, though the sun climbed higher above. The shadows pulled closer toward the altar, bending unnaturally against the direction of the light. A sudden thought pressed into the minds of those watching, not their own, yet familiar. The Nazarene once said, "What is hidden will be disclosed, and what is concealed will be brought into the open." And the words clung to the moment, as though they had been waiting here for centuries. The seal quivered faintly, then split with a sound like the slow tearing of cloth. The golden light spilled outward, not blinding, but heavy, like the warmth of a fire that you could feel in your chest rather than your skin. The ground beneath the altar shifted, revealing a hollow space that seemed far deeper than the stone's size should allow. The hum ceased, replaced by a silence so complete it pressed against the eardrums. The air was thick with the scent of something metallic mixed with rain, though no storm had passed. The light from the seal did not fade, but bent downward into the hollow as if pointing the way for whoever would dare approach. The valley held still, watching as the opening yawned wider. The glow within pulsed slowly, steady as breath, waiting for the one who would step inside. The day had been building toward something, though no one could name it. The air carried a restless energy that made leaves shiver on their branches even when the wind was still. Birds flew in erratic patterns, circling, then scattering, only to return again as if pulled by an invisible thread. The sunlight dimmed not from clouds, but from a strange shifting in the sky itself, as though the heavens had drawn a thin veil across their face. People stopped where they were, conversations halting mid-sentence. Tools were set down. Markets went quiet, and children lifted their faces to the strange glow overhead. The color of the light was neither morning nor evening, but an in-between. Hue that made familiar shapes look different, sharper, more watchful. The horizon seemed to lean closer, and the air pressed in, as if the atmosphere itself were narrowing its focus to a single point. Far above, a thin ripple passed through the sky like the shudder of a giant curtain. The ripple spread slowly outward, then froze, suspended mid-motion. The entire dome above held perfectly still. Every sound in the world seemed to fade until even the smallest rustle was amplified. A drop of water falling from a roof struck the ground with a clarity that felt unnatural. A cart's wheel turning against stone echoed longer than it should. For a heartbeat, it felt as though nothing moved at all. Not the clouds, not the air, not even time. The pause was not absence, but attention, as though the sky itself were listening, waiting for a word not yet spoken. A faint shimmer began at the edges of vision, like heat rising from stone, but cold instead of warm. It traced along the horizon, forming an unbroken circle of light. The circle pulsed once, slow and deliberate, and something in the earth seemed to answer. A low vibration ran beneath the soles of your feet, not threatening, but undeniably aware. The feeling carried weight, not of danger, but of expectation, as if an unseen witness had just arrived. When the sky finally exhaled, the ripple dissolved and movement returned, but the air did not feel the same. It carried the memory of the stillness, as though the world had been marked by it and would be marked again. The sun was low enough to cast long strands of gold across the land, yet high enough to hold the day in its grasp. The light was different now, richer, heavier, as though it carried the last unspoken sentence of a story waiting to end or begin. The air shimmered faintly, each ripple bending the view ahead into something almost unrecognizable. The ground underfoot felt warm, not from heat alone, but from something deeper, something that seemed to rise from within the earth itself far ahead. A ridge split the horizon in two. Behind it, the light intensified into a narrow beam that pierced the sky and spread outward like the slow unfurling of a banner. The beam shifted slightly as though searching, then fixed its aim directly where you stood. It did not blind, but it stripped away. Shadow, leaving no corner untouched. No sound reached your ears, but the air was thick with the sense of a question. The wind slowed, then stopped, carrying with it a scent that was not of this season. A faint trace of salt, as if the sea were near, though no water lay within miles. The light above pulsed once, and in that pulse, every detail sharpened. The edges of leaves, the texture of stone, the fine threads of your own breath in the air. Each heartbeat matched the flicker, as though your body had been tuned to the rhythm of the ray itself. Along the edges of vision, small movements stirred. Figures in the distance paused to look toward the same place. A flock of birds shifted mid-flight, forming a perfect line toward the beam, then scattering as if the alignment had been too much to hold. The ridge ahead seemed taller, now its outline framed in the golden fire pouring from the sky. The beam narrowed, drawing itself into a single point that hung in the air, just beyond reach. It hovered, steady without flicker, a single note of light holding the space between day and night. The longer it stayed, the more it felt as though the entire sky leaned toward it, as though every breath in the world waited for what it would become. And then the light trembled once, like the pause before a voice speaks.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.